Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll see about the development of this neural tube. So this is the competency number 64.2. Describe the development of the neural tube, spinal cord, medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain, cerebral hemisphere, and cerebellum. And one more competency is 64.3. Describe this open neural tube defects on the basis of its development. So these are the learning objectives. So you should know nervous system develops from which germ layer, stages formation of neural tube. That stage it is called as neurulation. You should know about the anterior and posterior neurocore, their time of closure and what are their sites in the adult nervous system, parts of the neural tube and their fate you should know. You should know about the flexures of the neural tube and histogenesis and development of the all parts of this central nervous system. Also, you should know the development of the ventricles of the brain, then functional components of the spinal and cranial nerve nuclei. You should know about this neural crest cells, their derivatives and their clinical importance. And then you should be able to describe the neural tube defects on the developmental basis. So nervous system, basically there are three parts. That is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, it consists of these spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord and the cranial nerves arising from the brain. Part of this, it is one more is their autonomic nervous system. That is, this is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. So this central nervous system, that is brain and spinal cord, they are developing from the neural tube, and peripheral nervous system and autonomic nervous system, they are the derivatives of the neural crest cells. So all these parts, basically they are neuroectodermal in origin. They are developing from the neuroectoderm. So nervous system, if you see, it is ectodermal in origin. So when this starts developing neural tube, it starts developing by the end of the third week, that is by the 20th or 21st day of this intrauterine life. And how it is induced, the development starts. So induction, it is done by this notochord. We have seen it is a mesodermal cord which extends from the primitive knot up to this bucopharyngeal membrane. So that induces the surface ectoderm to develop into this neuroectoderm, and this neuroectoderm gives rise to this central nervous system. And this process of this formation of this neural tube from this neuroectoderm, this process, it is called as neurulation. So third week of development. Gastrulation, it is the formation of the three germ layers. And this embryo at this stage, it is called as neurula, when this nervous system is going to develop. So here, this diagram is showing this formation of this neural tube. So here this you can see, this is the surface ectoderm. And beneath that in the center, you are seeing this is the notochord shown with the yellow color. This is the endoderm. Situated between this ectoderm and endoderm on either side of notochord, this is the intraembryonic mesoderm. Now this notochord shown with this pink dot, it converts this surface ectoderm which is overlying this notochord, it is converted into neuroectoderm. So shown here, now this surface ectoderm, it is converted into neuroectoderm. Next, this neuroectodermal plate, this sinks beneath the surface ectoderm. So depression is seen, this is called as neural groove, and the margins, these are called as neural folds. Still, it sinks beneath the surface, and this neuroectoderm or neural groove, it gets detached from the surface ectoderm, and it forms a tubular structure that is called as neural tube, which lies just beneath this surface ectoderm and dorsal to this notochord. some of the cells, 2 dots I have shown, from these neural folds, they get detached and they lie between this neural tube and the surface ectoderm. These are called as neural crest cells. So same thing here you can see. So this neuroectoderm depressed beneath, it forms the neural groove, gets detached from the surface ectoderm, forms the neural tube. So some of the cells, they have got detached and they lie on either side of this neural tube, and these are called as neural crest cells. So what is the extent of this neural tube? We have seen notochord induces the formation of this neuroectoderm. So its extension, it is same, that is extending from this primitive knot, which lies at the cranial end of this primitive streak, up to this procaudal plate. This is the site of this bucopharyngeal membrane where ectoderm and endoderm, they are in contact. So that is the extent of the tube, extends from the primitive node or primitive knot up to this procaudal plate. Now this neural groove, we have seen this sinks beneath the surface and they fuse and they form the neural tube. So where this fusion starts, at which level? Fusion of this neural folds, it starts at the fourth somite, and from here this extends upwards cranially and caudally. So ultimately you will see a cranial opening temporarily is seen at the cranial end, and this is called as anterior neuropore. Similarly, at the caudal end of this neural tube, you will see an opening is seen, that is called as posterior neuropore. So through these anterior and posterior neuropores, this neural tube, it is continuous with what? It is communicating with this amniotic sac. And when the blood vascular system develops, these anterior and posterior neuropores, they get closed during this 4th week of intrauterine life. So initiation of this closure of this neural folds, it starts at the 4th somite. So the part cranial to this part of the neural tube, cranial to the 4th somite, it forms the brain vesicles. That is, it develops into the brain, and the part caudal to this 4th somite, that develops into this spinal cord. So this is here, you can see this is the anterior neuropore. So when it closes, so by the 25th day of intrauterine life, so during the 4th week, and the posterior neuropore, so this anterior site of this anterior neuropore in the brain, what it is seen as a lamina terminalis. So it is a membrane, you will see when you will see the brain, if you pull down this optic chiasma, so it extends from the optic chiasma upwards to this tubercle, which is present at the anterior end. So this lamina terminalis just cranial to this optic chiasma, and this forms the anterior boundary of this 3rd ventricle. So that is the site of anterior neuropore. The posterior neuropore, this closes 2 to 3 days later. So by the 27th or 28th day of this intrauterine life. And how it is seen? It is seen as a spinal dermal pit. So it at the coccygeal end, a surface depression will be seen overlying this. So that represents the site of this posterior neuropore. Now coming to these brain vesicles. So we have seen the part, this neural tube, cranial to the 4th somite. This gets dilated and this forms the brain vesicles. So 3 brain vesicles, they are formed. The cranial most, it is called as prosencephalon. Then the next to that, it is called as prosencephalon, or it is forebrain vesicle, mesencephalon or midbrain vesicle, and rhombencephalon, or it is the hindbrain vesicle. And the part caudal to the 4th somite, that remains narrow and tubular, and this forms the spinal cord. So these changes, they are seen again after the closure of this neuropore. Now during the 5th week, again these vesicles, they grow. Further changes, they are seen. So forebrain vesicle or prosencephalon, it shows 2 lateral outgrowths, and these are called as telencephalic vesicles. So now prosencephalon, it is divided into two parts, two telencephalic vesicles, and the original prosencephalon, it persists as the diencephalon. Then mesencephalon, it doesn't grow much, it remains as such, it is. Further, the third vesicle is the rhombencephalon, it gets divided into two parts. The part continuous with this mesencephalon, it is called as metencephalon, and the part which is adjacent to the spinal cord, this is called as myelencephalon. So rhombencephalon, this gets divided into two parts, metencephalon, myelencephalon. So prosencephalon divides into telencephalon and diencephalon. Mesencephalon remains as such. Rhombencephalon divides into metencephalon vesicle and the myelencephalon. Myelencephalon becomes continuous with this spinal cord. Now this neural tube, it has got a cavity because it is a hollow structure. So these cavities of this neural tube or these brain vesicles and spinal cord, what is the fate of these cavities? So they form the ventricles of the brain which are filled up with this CSF. So what is the cavity of this telencephalon? The two telencephalon vesicles, they arise from the prosencephalon on either side. So what they form? They form the lateral ventricles. Two lateral ventricles. The original cavity of the prosencephalon, which is going to form the diencephalon. So what it forms? It forms the third ventricle. Now this diencephalon, it is continuous with this mesencephalon. So what is the cavity? It is very narrow and it is called as cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. And what is the cavity of the rhombencephalon? That is metencephalon and myelencephalon. They form the fourth ventricle. And this myelencephalon, it is continuous lower down with this spinal cord. So cavity of the spinal cord, it is called as central canal. And at the terminal end, at this where it ends, that is at the L1, this central canal, it shows the dilatation, and that is called as terminal ventricle. So these are the cavities or ventricles of the brain. Now as this neural tube grows, the neural tube, it gets bent. Bending is seen, and that is called as a formation of the flexures. So three vesicles at the fourth week we have seen, that is prosencephalon, mesencephalon and rhombencephalon. So with this head fold, tail fold formations, this neural tube, it also gets folded. So first flexure seen, it is in the mesencephalon, that is at the prosencephalon and the mesencephalon, it bends ventrally, and this is called as cephalic flexure. So first flexure to appear, it is the mesencephalic, or only it is called as cephalic flexure in the mesencephalon at the junction between prosen and mesencephalon. Then the next, it appears at the junction of rhombencephalon, that is myelencephalon, it is continuous with the spinal cord. So at that junction, one more bend, it occurs. This bending is seen ventrally, it is concave ventrally. So this flexure, it is called as cervical flexure. So two flexures, they are seen by the fourth week, that is the cephalic flexure and the cervical flexure. Then by the fifth week, we have seen the subdivisions of these major vesicles. Prosencephalon divided into telencephalon and diencephalon. Rhombencephalon divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. So third flexure, it appears in the rhombencephalon. So this is the caudal part, is the myelencephalon, continuous with the spinal cord and continuous with this next to this mesencephalon, it is the metencephalon. So between metencephalon and myelencephalon, a flexure, a bend appears. Now this bend, it is convex dorsally on the dorsal side, or it is concave on the dorsal side and it is convex on the ventral side. So this flexure, this is called as pontine flexure. So these are the three flexures we have seen: mesencephalic flexure, cervical flexure, both are concave ventrally, and the pontine flexure, which is concave dorsally, or it is convex ventrally. So these are the flexures. Still further there occurs This is the same diagram. On the left side, you can see these are the flexures, major flexures. And on the right side, still there occurs differential growth of the various vesicles of this forebrain, and further bending, remodeling takes place. And ultimately, a final configuration of this brain, it is assumed. So this brain assumes its configuration as a result of this differential growth of vesicles and the flexures. So final appearance of this brain, it is C. Now what is the, so this is the formation of this neural tube, then its formation of the brain vesicles, formation of this cavities, fate of this cavity, then flexures we have seen. Then next is the changes in the wall of this neural tube, because this is just a neuroectoderm which are depressed below the surface ectoderm. So further changes they take place in the wall, and then this gray matter, white matter, or neurons, axons, everything will be formed. So this process, it is called as histogenesis. So initially, this is just a neuroectoderm, so just a single layer. So these are called as neuroepithelial cells. So this is the innermost layer. It comes. These cells, neuroepithelial cells or neuroectodermal cells, they divide, redivide, and they give rise to one more layer on their outer side. And this is called as mantle layer. This mantle layer, what develops in the mantle layer are the cells, that is neuroblast cells and spongioblast cells. Neuroblast cells, they develop into the neurons. Spongioblast cells, they develop into the neuroglial cells, that is these are supporting the neurons. So their cell bodies, they are formed in the mantle layer. So this mantle layer, if you see in the central nervous system, you have seen the gray matter is there, white matter is there. In the cerebellum, gray matter is outwards, white matter is inside. But in the spinal cord, you will see gray matter is inside, white matter is outside. So what is this gray matter or nuclei? So these are nothing but this gray matter. That is the mantle zone. Neuronal cell body. They form the gray matter of the nuclei. While their axons, they run outwards and they form next layer, that is called as a marginal layer, which consists of this cell processes, that is axons and dendrites. So that forms the marginal layer. In some of these, that is especially in the cerebrum or cerebellum, this mantle zone, it protrudes outside this marginal zone and it forms the cortex, cerebellar cortex or cerebral cortex. And so they form the gray matter or they form the nuclei. So three layers they are formed. The inner layer, it is called as ependymal zone. The next zone, it is called as mantle zone, which is responsible for the gray matter and nuclei. And the outermost layer, it is called as marginal zone, which forms the white matter in the nervous system. So this is again the same thing here. You can see these are the neuroepithelial cells, that is the neural tube. These cells divide, redivide, give rise to this next layer, mantle layer. And the outermost layer, it is the marginal layer. Further changes they are seen in the mantle layer. Now the ventral part of the mantle layer, it bulges. So this mantle layer, it gets divided into a ventral part and the dorsal part. This arrow is showing the ventral part. This is called as basal lamina. And the dorsal part of this mantle zone, it is called as alar lamina. So alar lamina, it is sensory in function. The basal lamina or basal plate, it is motor in. So motor neurons, they develop in the basal lamina. And in the alar lamina, sensory neurons, they develop. So ultimately, if you see in the spinal cord, this basal lamina, what it is going to form? It forms the anterior horn. And what the alar lamina, it forms the posterior horn. So this is the gray matter which is derived from this mantle zone. And the axons of these neurons in the mantle zone, they traverse outwards, and what they form is marginal zone. They form various tracks, ascending and this descending. Now coming to this development of this spinal cord. In short, we will see development of all the parts. So spinal cord, it develops from the part of the neural tube caudal to the fourth somite. So that is the caudal to the myelencephalon. This part of the neural tube, it remains narrow and it is elongated one. This cavity of this caudal part of this neural tube. What it forms in the spinal cord? It forms the central canal. Then the mantle zone, it is divided into this basal plate. So this basal plate, what it forms? It forms the anterior horn of this spinal cord, anterior as well as this lateral horn at some places. The alar lamina or alar plate, what it forms in the spinal cord? Dorsal horn of this gray matter. Alar lamina, I have told you, it is sensory neurons. They develop it from the alar lamina, from the neuroblast cells, and basal lamina, blast cells, they develop into this motor. Now these basal lamina, they have got this motor nucleus. So there are functional components. So what are these in case of spinal cord? It is called as a general somatic efferent. Means what? The axons of these anterior horn cells, they form what? They form the ventral root or the motor root of the spinal nerve. And what is their destination? They innervate the skeletal muscles of the limbs and trunk. So this, we call this as a motor component of the spinal nerves. All the spinal nerves, they are mixed. They are carrying both fibers, motor as well as sensory. So motor component runs through the ventral root and the sensory component runs through this dorsal root. Both these meet and they form the spinal nerve. So the somatic efferent nuclei means situated in the anterior horn. They supply what? The skeletal muscles of these limbs and the trunk. And this is extending throughout this spinal cord. Now one more group of nuclei, they are present in the spinal cord, that is motor group nuclei, and that is called as general visceral efferent, GVE. General visceral efferent means this corresponds to this autonomic nervous system. There are two parts of this autonomic nervous system, that is sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So what is sympathetic is described as, it is described as thoracolumbar outflow. So preganglionic sympathetic fibers, they are confined only to these T1 to L2 segments of the spinal cord. There is additional lateral horn is there and nuclei are situated there, intermediate nuclei, and axons of these nuclei, they constitute what is called as preganglionic sympathetic fibers, and they run through what? They run through the ventral root along with this motor fibers which are running through this motor ventral root of this spinal nerve. And there is a parasympathetic outflow. What is parasympathetic system is described as? It is described as craniosacral outflow. Craniosacral means sacral outflow. It is confined to S2, S3, S4. So again there is a lateral horn. So nuclei of this zone, they give rise to preganglionic parasympathetic fibers. So this is the spinal part. And cranio means there are again some cranial nerves which have got this general efferent. That is, they are carrying this. There are nuclei and their axons, they constitute the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers that we will see in the cranial nerves. So this is one more functional component located to this only lateral horn from T1 to L2, preganglionic sympathetic fibers, S2, S3, S4, preganglionic parasympathetic fibers. So these nuclei, they give rise to what? Preganglionic, sympathetic and the parasympathetic fibers. And what they supply, the sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers, autonomic nervous system. It is involuntary, it is not our control. So they supply these cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, that is all viscera, blood vessels and the glands. So, and the somatic component, it supplies the skeletal muscles. So this is just a diagrammatic representation. Here you can see from this lateral horn, this is the dorsal root of this spinal nerve. This is the ventral root of spinal nerve. So these preganglionic sympathetic fibers, they are running through this ventral root. Then they enter this ventral ramus. And from there, they leave the spinal nerve and they relay into this ganglion, that is the either sympathetic ganglion or parasympathetic ganglion. So these fibers starting from the spinal cord up to this ganglion, sympathetic or autonomic ganglion, these are called as preganglionic fibers. Now axons of these ganglion cells, they grow outwards. Again, they enter the spinal nerve. So what these fibers now, they are called as postganglionic fibers. And then they supply this, their targeted organs, either the gland, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, whatever is there. So these preganglionic fibers, they are leaving the spinal cord. What is this called as? Here same thing again, see it from the lateral horn. These preganglionic fibers, they are running through the ventral root. They enter this spinal nerve. Now they leave this. They leave this spinal nerve and they go to this sympathetic ganglion. So this is called as white ramus communicans, communication between the spinal nerve and this sympathetic ganglia. So white ramus communicans means these are the preganglionic fibers coming from the spinal cord. Now from the ganglion, the fibers arise, that is, these are the postganglionic fibers. They again enter into the spinal nerve and again they are distributed to their target organs. So there are these preganglionic fibers, they are connected through this white ramus communicans, and the postganglionic fibers, they arise pass through this gray ramus communicans again into this spinal nerve. So this is this lateral horn, that is the general visceral efferent component. So alar lamina, again same, corresponding with this you will see sensory nuclei there, that is the general somatic afferent, that is the dorsal horn nuclei. So they receive all this. There is dorsal root ganglion is there, peripheral fiber brings the sensations, and the central fiber, it goes towards this dorsal horn and it relays there, and the dorsal horn nuclei again their axons, they will form the ascending tract. So that is the general somatic afferent. So all sensations, pain, touch, temperature, steniognosis, proprioceptive, that is from the muscles and tendons, they are carried through this to this nuclei. So here again you can see this. This is the dorsal root ganglion. So it's peripheral process that is traversing through the spinal nerve. It brings the sensations towards this dorsal root ganglion, which acts as a first order neuron. It's central process. Now it goes towards this dorsal horn nuclei, relays there. So they will act as a second order neuron, and their axons, now they will form these ascending tracts. So that is the general somatic afferent column. Then again there is general visceral afferent, so situated in the lateral horn. So they receive the general sensations again from the viscera, glands, and the blood vessels. So again these sensations, again they are traversing through this dorsal root ganglion and they are ascending upwards. So again it is confined to this sympathetic outflow and the parasympathetic, that is the sacral outflow. So this is the alar lamina. Now what are the positional changes of the spinal cord? So if you see by the 8th week of intrauterine life, if you see the vertebral column and the spinal cord, they are coinciding with each other. So the spinal cord, it is extending up to the coccyx by the 8th week of intrauterine life. But then there occurs differential growth. The vertebral column develops fast as compared to this spinal cord. So the level of this spinal cord, it recedes. So by the 24th week, this comes to lie at the first sacral vertebra. That is, the spinal cord ends at the level of first sacral vertebra. Now further in the newborn, the spinal cord, this ends at the level of L3 vertebra. And in the adults, this ends at the level of L1. So these lower spinal nerves, they surround this phylum terminal, and it is called as this cauda equina. So that they take this oblique course to pass through this corresponding intervertebral foramina. So all these spinal segments, they are confined up to this L1 level. So these are the positional changes of this spinal cord. So that's all about this spinal cord. Then this spinal cord upward, it is continuous with this rhombencephalon, that is the part of this rhombencephalon, that is the myelencephalon. So that develops into this medulla oblongata. So medulla oblongata develops from which brain vesicle? It develops from the myelencephalon of this rhombencephalon or hindbrain vesicle. If you see these gross features of this medulla oblongata, it has got two parts, closed and the open part. The closed part, it is the lower part which is continuous downwards with this spinal cord. As it approaches this pons, it gets opened up It forms the floor of the fourth ventricle, and that is called as a open part. So this is seen from the posterior aspect. This is the open part which is forming the floor of the fourth ventricle. So on the front part, you can see these elevations, that is called as pyramid. By the side of this, here it is the olive. Olivary nucleus lies beneath this. Beneath this pyramid, there lies this main bulk, that is the corticospinal tract. Posteriorly, you will see in the center midline, two structures are seen. So that is the fasciculus gracilis, and above it ends into this gracile tubercle. Just lateral to that, you will see fasciculus cuneatus ends into the cuneate tubercles. So gracile and cuneate nuclei, they lie there. That is the tract of Gall and Gourda, dorsal column tracts. They end there. So that is this tract of Gall and Gourda, which are seen posteriorly. So now again we have seen in this neural tube, that is the mantle zone, which forms the basal lamina and alar lamina. Alar lamina is sensory, basal lamina is motor in function. So now in the spinal cord, we have seen these nerves arising. These are the spinal nerves, and all are mixed. But the nerves which are arising now here from this brain, these are called as cranial nerves. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, but they are not, all are not mixed. Some are motor, some are purely motor, some are purely sensory, some are mixed. So these 12 cranial nerves, they arise from different parts of the brain. From the medulla, which cranial nerves arise? So that is the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. These cranial nerves arise. So from the alar lamina, they will form this sensory nuclei of these cranial nerves. And in addition, what it forms, alar lamina, this contributes to the formation of nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, that is posteriorly. And anteriorly, we have seen next to this pyramid, there is olivary nucleus, that is the inferior olivary. Olive, beneath that, there lies the inferior olivary nucleus. So these are the derivatives of this alar lamina. And in addition, they form the sensory nuclei of the 9th and 10th cranial nerves. What is the fate of this basal lamina? Basal is motor, so they will form the motor nuclei of this 9th, that is glossopharyngeal, vagus, cranial accessory, and the hypoglossal nerve. They will be developed from this basal lamina. So what is the development of this open part? In the lower part, it is closed one, but as this approaches the pons, here you can see this. This is the alar lamina. This is the basal lamina. As it approaches upwards, this alar lamina, this gets widened. With this, the roof plate of this ventricle or cavity, it gets widened. So with this, so this is called as an open part. So what happens here? In the spinal cord, what we have seen, alar lamina is dorsally situated, basal lamina is ventrally situated. But when they open up, what you are seeing here, alar lamina lies laterally, and the basal lamina, it comes to lie medially. And they are covered up by this roof of this ventricle. So this is called as an open part, that is the widening of this roof plate. So what is the now histogenesis? So now in this medulla oblongata, you are seeing this is the basal plate, which is forming now this motor nuclei of the cranial nerves, which are arising from the medulla. This is the alar lamina, which lies just lateral to this basal plate. And what it will form, the cells they will form the sensory nuclei of these corresponding cranial nerves, which are arising from this medulla oblongata. So something about these cranial nerves. So spinal nerves all are mixed nerves, but cranial nerves, they are classified as purely motor, purely sensory, and mixed. So first, third, second, and eighth, that is olfactory, optic, and vestibulocochlear, they are purely sensory. Third, fourth, sixth, 12th, they are purely motor, that is oculomotor, trochlear, abducent, then cranial accessory, and the hypoglossal. And mixed means they are carrying both motor as well as sensory. So this is the 5th is the trigeminal, 7th is the facial, 9th is the glossopharyngeal, and 10th is the vagus. So again, sensations we have seen in the spinal cord, there are somatic and the visceral sensations. So same thing here with this cranial nerves, that is the somatic and visceral, both sensory as well as motor. But here in case of this cranial nerves, further these sensations, they are divided into general and special. We have not seen special sensations in case of spinal cord, but in nuclear groups. But here in case of this cranial nerves, you will see these functional components, that is further somatic, afferents or efferents. They are divided into general, special, visceral, further divided into general, special. And ultimately, instead of here now only 8 groups to be formed, but here ultimately 7 functional component groups, 3 in the motor and 4 in the sensory group, they are formed. So you can see there is general somatic afferent, then special somatic afferent, general visceral afferent, special visceral afferent. So there is no general or special in case of this efferent. So there is only somatic efferent in case of somatic. Then further visceral, again it is divided into general visceral efferent and visceral. So these are the 7 functional components of this cranial nerve. And these cranial nerve nuclei, according to their supply, they will be having these functional nuclei. And axons of these nuclei, they will constitute this cranial nerve. So in the motor or basal lamina, 3 functional components we have seen. Somatic efferent means what? They will supply the skeletal muscles derived from the somites. So which cranial nerves they have? That is the 3rd, 4th, 6th and 12th, which are purely motor. They have got this somatic efferent component. Then special visceral efferent, it is called as branchial efferent. These are the nerves which supply the muscles which are developing from the pharyngeal arches. So if you remember the nerve of the first arch, it is the 5th trigeminal mandibular nerve. Then nerve of the second arch, it is the 7th. Nerve of the third arch, it is the glossopharyngeal. Nerve of the 4th and 6th arch, it is the vagus. So all these nerves, they will have this component, that is the motor nucleus will be special visceral efferent or branchial efferent. And general visceral efferent, it is called as a parasympathetic component. Means this is the now cranial part of this craniosacral outflow. So these nerves will be carrying these nuclei, they will be giving origin to these preganglionic parasympathetic fibers. So which nerves they are having this general visceral efferent, that is parasympathetic component, that is the 3rd nerve, Edinger vespal nucleus, 7th nerve, superior salivatory nucleus, 9th nerve, inferior salivatory nucleus, and the 10th nerve, that is the dorsal nucleus of vagus. The sensory component, they have got 4 functional. General visceral afferent, the sensations from this viscera, they are carried, and where they relay into the dorsal nucleus of vagus. So it is the nucleus for the general visceral afferent. Special visceral afferent, taste and smell sensation. So nucleus of tractus solitarius. So it is concerned with which nerves? That is the 7th nerve, carries taste sensation from the anterior to 3rd, 9th posterior 1/3, and the 10th posterior most part of the tongue. General somatic afferent, all these sensations from the face area, they are relayed into this sensory nuclei of the trigeminal nerve. There are 3 sensory nucleus. One is spinal nucleus situated in the medulla, sensory nucleus situated in the pons, and mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve. And there is only one motor nucleus that is giving fibers to this mandibular nerve. So all this general somatic afferent, it is represented by these 3 sensory nuclei of this trigeminal nerve. And then special somatic afferent, it is the second, that is concerned with this vision equilibrium. So that is the 8th nerve, it will have special somatic afferent. And this optic nerve and olfactory nerves, actually they don't have nuclei. These are the exceptions to this cranial nerves. So this is same thing you can see. So basal lamina is lying medially and alar lamina lying laterally, that is in the brainstem. This same follows in the pons and up to this midbrain. So most medial structure, it is this called as somatic efferent. So just tabular form, you can see somatic efferent to which cranial nerves it is? 3rd, 4th, 6th and 12th. Then is the special visceral or branchial efferent. So all the nerves of these pharyngeal arches, 5th, 7th, 9th and 10th. Then general visceral efferent, it is the parasympathetic component. So again to this 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th. Now coming to this afferent, general visceral afferent. So it is going to this dorsal nucleus of vagus. Special visceral afferent, that is the taste sensation nucleus of the tractus solitarius, 7th, 9th and 10th nerves. Then is the general somatic, only the 5th nerve, all the 3 nuclei, that is the spinal nucleus, then sensory nucleus and the mesencephalic nucleus. And spatial somatic corresponding to this vestibulocochlear nerve, vestibular nuclei and the cochlear nuclei. So this is the same again, just so from the medulla oblongata, which cranial nerves arise? That is the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. So 9th nerve, it is a mixed nerve. So how many nuclei will be there? That is the branchial efferent, that is called as nucleus ambiguous. Then general visceral efferent, it supplies the parotid gland. So there is inferior salivatory nucleus in the medulla. Their axons, they travel through this 9th nerve. It gives then tympanic branch, tympanic plexus, lesser petrosal, relays into this otic ganglia and supplies. So this is the preganglion. And also the general sensations from the posterior 1/3. So general visceral afferent component is there and taste sensation. So all these nuclei which are situated in the medulla, their axons, they will constitute the 9th nerve and then it will come out through this jugular foramen. So these are the functional components of this 9th nerve. Then the 10th nerve of the, it has got branchial efferent, so nerve of the 4th and 6th arch. Also supplies, it has got a parasympathetic component, so general visceral efferent, it is represented by this dorsal nucleus. Even general visceral afferent, the same nucleus, that is the dorsal nucleus of the vagus. And taste sensation, so there is nucleus of tractus solitarius. So these are the functional components of the 10th nerve. Then the 11th nerve, it supplies through vagus, so branchial efferent only. 12th nerve, we have seen it is purely motor, so there is only hypoglossal nucleus which is situated in this medulla, and spinal nucleus is situated, which represents general somatic afferent, and vestibular nuclei. So these are the nuclei. Why this is important? When you study the sections of the medulla pons, if you remember the cranial nerve nuclei and ascending and descending tracts at various levels, you will definitely understand those sections. So that's why you should know which nerves are arising, what are their functional components, and which ascending and descending tracts they are there at that level. So you will understand better all the sections of this midbrain, pons, and this medulla. This is again in the tabular form. You can go it afterwards. So pons develops from what? That is from the metencephalon part of this. So which cranial nerves arise from the pons? It is the 5th nerve entirely from the pons, and at the junction of pons and medulla, 6th, 7th and 8th. So all these cranial nerve nuclei you will see within the pons. So from the alar lamina, pontine nuclei and sensory nuclei of the cranial nerves, 5th, 7th and the 8th. Then from the basal lamina, motor nuclei of which nerves? That is the 5th nerve, 6th nerve and the 7th nerve. So that is the fate of this basal lamina of this pons of this metencephalon. So that is again same 6th nerve. It is purely motor. It supplies only one muscle, lateral rectus. So abducent nucleus seen in these pons. 7th nerve of the 2nd arch. So it has got branchial efferent component, parasympathetic component. That is the general visceral efferent. These nuclei are superior salivatory. That is, they are supplying this submandibular, sublingual glands and lacrimal gland through this pterygopalatine ganglia. Taste sensation. So it has got this spatial visceral afferent component. Then the 8th nerve. It is this. Sorry, it is the 8th cranial nerve. It is the vestibulocochlear. So vestibular and cochlear nuclei, they are there. There are 4 vestibular nuclei, superior, inferior, medial and lateral, situated partly in the medulla, partly in the pons. And cochlear nuclei, in ventral and dorsal cochlear nuclei, they are situated within the pons. Even the 5th nerve. So which nuclei? There are 3 sensory nuclei for the 5th nerve. Out of that sensory nucleus, it is situated within the pons, spinal nucleus in the medulla and mesencephalic in the midbrain. And the motor nucleus, that is the branchial efferent, again it is situated in the pons. Now coming to this development of the cerebellum. So cerebellum develops again from this metencephalon, alar lamina of the metencephalon. So when hindbrain vesicle, which develop from the hindbrain vesicle, it is the pons, medulla, and the cerebellum. Together they constitute the hindbrain. So cerebellum, it develops from the alar lamina of this metencephalon, which forms this cerebellar cortex and the nucleus. So now here you can see this is the metencephalon, which is again forming this floor of the fourth ventricle. The medially situated, this is the basal lamina, and laterally situated is the alar lamina. So the cranial most part of this alar lamina here shown. These from these alar laminae develops the cerebellum. Now this grows towards each other in the roof of the fourth ventricle, and they fuse with each other. Further, you can see it here. They encroach, they obstruct this, they cover this upper part of this fourth ventricle. So they are coming now. This cerebellum, it is coming in the roof. So if you see the fourth ventricle, floor is formed by this pons and medulla, and the roof is formed by this cerebellum. So it is developing in the roof of this fourth ventricle. So these two alar lamina, they grow further, they fuse in the midline, and they cover this fourth ventricle. And further profuse growth from two sides, but the central part, it remains undeveloped. So these are the two cerebellar hemispheres, and the middle part, which is underdeveloped, that forms the vermis. So this is how the cerebellum develops. And now they form this cerebellar cortex and this cerebellar nuclei. So alar lamina, it forms the cerebellar cortex. Outside you can see, and the cerebellar nuclei, some part, it remains embedded within the white matter. Four nuclei are there, that is the emboliformis, fastigial nucleus, globosus, emboliformis, and the dentate nucleus. So all these are the again derivatives of this alar lamina of this metencephalon. And the white matter, that is the axons of these nuclei, they will traverse. There are afferent and efferent fibers coming to this cerebellum. So these form the peduncles. So axons of this dentate nucleus, it forms the superior cerebellar. Pontine nuclei, they form the middle cerebellar. And coming from this medulla and spinal cord, they will form the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Coming to this development of midbrain, this develops from the mesencephalon or midbrain vesicle, remains underdeveloped, narrow, and that develops into this midbrain. So again there is basal lamina, which cranial nerves arise from the midbrain. It is the third and fourth, that is the oculomotor and trochlear. So their nuclei will be seen. So basal lamina will develop into oculomotor nucleus, trochlear, and one more parasympathetic nucleus of the oculomotor, that is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. While the alar lamina, it will develop into what? There are superior and inferior colliculi, which are responsible for the auditory, visual, and auditory reflexes. So these collicular neurons, they will be formed from the alar lamina, then substantia nigra and red nucleus. All these are the derivatives of this alar lamina. So cranial nerve nuclei, which cranial nerves arise? That is third and fourth. So third nerve, it supplies all the extraocular muscles except this superior oblique and lateral rectus, so oculomotor nucleus. And this also carries preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, that is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, where these fibers, they relay into the ciliary ganglion. And the ciliary nerves, short ciliary nerves, they will supply what? Sphincter pupillae and the ciliaris muscle. So that is the parasympathetic component. And fourth nerve, again it is purely motor, so it is somatic efferent component, trochlear nucleus. Now coming to this development of the cerebral hemisphere. So here, this is the prosencephalon. This is in the section, you can see this is the prosencephalon, cavity of this prosencephalon. Now this shows on two sides, both the sides, one more, two vesicles on either side. So this is called as telencephalon. And this original part, this persists as the diencephalon. So here from the prosencephalon, you can see on either side, these are the two telencephalic vesicles. They will grow further. Now this telencephalon grows on all the sides, above, below, forwards, backwards, around, and profuse growth occurs and ultimately what it forms is the two cerebral hemispheres, and that they are becoming continuous with this diencephalon. So diencephalon, which forms this thalamus and hypothalamus. So this is the telencephalon, that is the cerebral hemispheres, and beneath these two gets buried is the diencephalon. So that is the development of this cerebral hemisphere. So this orderly arrangement of this basal plate or alar plate, it is not seen in the cerebellum or in the cerebrum. It is seen only in this brain stem. So again, this mantle zone, it comes outwards and it will form the cerebral cortex. So what about this development of the lateral ventricle? So this is the telencephalon and its cavity, that is the lateral ventricle. Now this grows on all the sides, you can see. So with further extension, this cavity also it increases, it grows from backwards and again it comes forwards. So here you can see that is the extension of this lateral ventricle, and ultimately you can see in the anterior lobe, that is the anterior horn is seen. It grows posteriorly also, this cavity into the occipital lobe. So this is the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle and this is the inferior horn. So this is how the lateral ventricle develops. So this is showing the stages of this development through these various periods. So when this sulci and gyri up to the 6th month, if you see the brain, it is smooth one. There are no sulci gyri, but by the 7th month onwards, these sulci gyri, they are well developed. So this is just milestones in this development of the neural tube. That is neural plate. It forms at the end of the 3rd week. That is the stage of neurulation. Closure of the anterior neuropore, 25th day. Closure of the posterior neuropore, 28th day. Formation of the brain vesicles, 4th and 5th week. Differentiation of the cerebellum, 12th week. And myelination of the nerves starts by the 28th week. So what are the neural tube defects? That is the failure of fusion of these neural folds leads to the various defects. 2 types: open neural tube defects, that is the nervous tissue, it is exposed to the exterior. That is called as open defects. Closed means the nervous tissue is not exposed, it is covered with the skin. So these are called as closed neural tube defects. Again, various factors are there responsible for this. So it can be a genetic variations or abnormalities or chromosomal abnormalities, even the drugs or infections during this pregnancy period that may lead to this neural tube defects, especially if anticonvulsant drugs, if mother is taking, then they have got a adverse effects on this development. Even nutritional deficiency, important one is the folic acid deficiency. Again, it is leading to these various neural tube defects. So they may be seen in the brain vesicles or they may be seen in the spinal cord. So in the brain vesicles, these are called as cranial neural tube defects. So there are again various types: anencephaly, cranium bifidum, cranial meningocele, encephalocele, congenital hydrocephalus or congenital dermal sinus. If there occurs defects in the histogenesis, means in the neurons, so defects, they will, gross abnormality may not be seen, but that leads to the seizures, that is convulsions, or it is also one of the factors responsible for the mental retardation. So coming to this cranial defects, so anencephaly, absence of this forebrain, that is called as anencephaly. Brainstem is developed, but this forebrain, it has been not developed. Again, this is a lethal condition. Cranium bifidum means if there is a defect in the development of the cranium, you will see gaps will be seen in the cranium. So this condition, it is called as cranium bifidum. Sometimes it is only covered with the skin. You will see there are depressions in the skull or in the head. But sometimes the nervous tissues or meninges, they will protrude through this cranium bifidum. And then this terminology is different one. So cranium bifidum, it is the defect in the developing cranium anywhere. And depending on that, if meninges, they protrude through this defect, Again, they get covered with, so this is called as cranial meningocele. And if nervous tissue, any part of the brain, depending on the site of this cranium bifidum, then this condition, it is called as encephalocele. So meningocele, only protrusion of the meninges, encephalocele, protrusion of the brain tissue. Sometimes brain may be smaller in development. So this condition is called as microcephaly, may lead to this mental retardation. Congenital hydrocephalus, ventricles we have seen, there is a production of the CSF, it is circulating. So if either there is excessive production or obstruction to the passage, that leads to this hydrocephalus. So during intrauterine life, if one of the factor is present, the baby is born with a large head, the ventricles are dilated, and this condition, it is called as congenital hydrocephalus. Now coming to the spinal neural tube defects. So again, like cranium bifidum, spina bifida, failure of these vertebral arches, there is no non-development of the spine. Through that may protrude the meninges, meningocele. If spinal cord protrudes outwards, meningomyelocele, and congenital dermal sinus, or severe form, it is called as rachichisis. So spina bifida occulta, it is not exactly the defect in the neural tube, but it is defect in this vertebral column covering this neural tube. So for failure of fusion of this vertebral arches, and that is seen as a depression again in the skin. So sometimes only depression or tuft of hair coming out of. So this is a spina bifida occulta. This is relatively a milder condition. Through that defect, sometimes meninges may protrude. So this is meningocele. And if nervous tissue, spinal cord, neural tissue is seen, then this is called as meningomyelocele. This is same diagram. What is now congenital dermal sinus? You will see the skin lesions or elevations or protrusions. They are seen anywhere extending from the cervical region up to the coccygeal region. So we have seen that is surface ectoderm. It is converted into neuroectoderm and it gets out separated from the surface ectoderm, lies beneath this surface ectoderm and forms the neural tube. If there is incomplete separation of this neural plate, neuroectoderm, from the surface ectoderm, then communication remains between the skin and the nervous system. And this is seen in the form of these such depressions or these skin lesions, and this is called as congenital dermal sinus. Sometimes may be severe, they may have got connection with the nervous system, or just a blind tracks will be seen. So this congenital dermal sinus, anywhere you can see starting from the neck up to the coccyx, and this is because of the incomplete separation of the neuroectoderm from the surface ectoderm. Rachichisis, it is failure of closure of this posterior neuropore. So this is a severe form of this spina bifida. So in the autonomic nervous system, if ganglia fail to develop in the wall of this gut, the commonest is the congenital megacolon, that is, it leads to this neuromuscular incoordination and dilatation of the colon, so Hirschsprung disease. And lastly, something about these neural crest cells. What are these neural crest cells? So here you can see this is the neuroectoderm, or neural plate is formed just dorsal to this notochord. Now this neural plate depresses beneath this surface ectoderm. So at the margins, these margins of this neural groove, they are called as neural folds. Now these neural folds, they fuse dorsally and they form the complete neural tube. But some of the cells of these neural folds, they get out separated from the neural tube and lie between this surface epidermis, surface ectoderm, and this neural tube. And these cells, these are called as neural crest cells. And further, now they migrate to these various sites. So these cells, if you see these neural crest cells, they are multipotent. They convert into various structures and they are migratory. They become motile. So what are the derivatives of these neural crest cells? So all these ganglia, dorsal root ganglia of the spinal nerves, or sensory ganglia of the cranial nerves, then autonomic ganglia, sympathetic, parasympathetic chain, medulla of the suprarenal gland, then melanocytes, they form the leptomeninges, that is pia and arachnoid, odontoblast cells, that is the dentin. Also they form the Schwann cells. All these neuroglial cells, Schwann cells, oligodendrocytes, ependymal cells, or these astrocytes, all these are the derivatives. Then we have already seen in the pharyngeal arches, mesoderm of the pharyngeal arches, there is a contribution from the neural crest cells, and they are forming what? All these cartilages and the bones of the corresponding arches. Even in the heart, they are contributing to this spiral septum of the walls. Even in the face, palate, even in the eyeball, the posterior epithelium of this cornea, it is contributed by this neural crest or vitreous body. So all these are the various diverse derivatives of these neural crest cells. So what is the clinical importance? The diseases of these neural crest cells, it is called as neurocristopathies. So they are contributing to this throughout the body. In the head, neck, in the thorax, in the abdomen, they are contributing. So sometimes all these anomalies, they are seen. They are complementary to each other. So anomalies of the face, neck, heart, they are associated with each other. If you see the heart anomaly, it is sometimes always associated with this face anomaly or the neck anomaly. So because of this, the common source of origin, that is from the neural crest cells. So these common anomalies you will see, we have seen in the first stage, that is mandibulofacial dystosis, the deformities in the face, even the Hirschsprung disease, pheochromocytoma, that is the tumor of the suprarenal medulla, Fallot's tetralogy, melanoma, all these are the diseases of this neural crest cells. So this is the model we keep for the examination for this neural tube. So what is this model is of? This is the neural tube and the somites. So central one, this is the neural tube. And by the sides, you are seeing the surface elevations, cubical surface elevations. Actually, these are mesodermal, paraxial mesoderm, but they produce the elevations on the surface ectoderm. So these are called as somites surrounding this neural tube. So the upper end or cranial end is opened here. This is called as anterior neuropore. Similarly, you will see the opening at this caudal end. This is the posterior neuropore. This is the yolk sac, yellow colored, and the amniotic sac is opened up. One more model, this we keep for the in the viva. So this is the model again of the developing neural tube. This is showing the flexures or bends of this neural tube. So model of this neural tube. So this is identify the vesicles. So this is the telencephalon. Then is the diencephalon. So together this is actually the prosencephalon consisting of the telencephalon, diencephalon. Next is this is the mesencephalon or midbrain vesicle. Next to that is the hindbrain vesicle divided into, this is the metencephalon and this is the myelencephalon, and it is continuous lower downwards with this spinal cord. This is the spinal cord. Now in this mesencephalon, at the junction between this prosen and mesen, you will see this flexure. So this is called as a cephalic flexure or mesencephalic flexure, first to appear. Then at the junction of myelencephalon and this spinal cord, this is the cervical flexure. And then between this metencephalon and myelencephalon, you are seeing this flexure. So this is the pontine flexure. So this is showing this flexures of this neural tube. So these questions may be asked. Neural tube develops from which germ layer? That is the neuroectoderm. Which structure induces? That is the notochord. Parts you should know: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and their fate. Flexures, 3 flexures you should know: cervical, cephalic, and mesencephalic. What are these neural crest cells? These are the detached neuroectodermal cells from the neural tube which lie between this neural tube. And what are their derivatives? You should know the congenital anomalies, anterior, posterior neuropores, when do they close, what are their sites? All these questions may be. So short notes may be asked on this neural tube or on the neural crest cells. So that's all. So start reading and be safe at home. Thank you.